So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me here today. I am Mary Claire Kennedy. I am the chair for NAIN, and I'm also Academic Integrity Lead at the University of Limerick. And I'm joined by a group of individuals today, all who are members of NAIN, to discuss the NAIN Strategy, which is published, and it's a NAIN Strategy from 2025 to 2028. So we're very excited about the publication of this strategy, and very thankful to our members for the huge amount of work that has gone into the development of this strategy. And so the purpose of this conversation really is to explore the type of domains that are covered and goals that are covered within our strategy, and to think about how they might come into practice or into lived reality in the coming years through our work in NAIN. So first of all, I might start with some introductions, and then we can move on to our discussion. So Justin, I might start with you, please.
Thank you very much, Mary Claire. My name is Justin Tonra, and I am the Deputy Chair of NAIN. I am also the Academic Integrity Officer at University of Galway.
Justin. Catherine.
My name is Catherine Fox. I'm Principal of Dunboyne College of Further Education and Training, and I'm representing the further education sector on behalf of Louth and Meath Education and Training Board. There are 16 ETBs in the country, and we are representing those.
Lovely. Thank you, Catherine. Loretta.
Hello, I'm Loretta. I'm the Academic Integrity Education Officer at University College Cork. So I'm based in our skills centre, our student-facing centre, and I do educational training with students and staff here.
Thanks, Loretta. Fiona.
Hello, Mary Claire and everyone else. It's lovely to be here. Fiona Reardon is my name. I'm Dean of Teaching and Learning in CCT College Dublin, a private college. So I guess I'm wearing the hat of a private college, but I have experience of working in DCU for a number of years on academic integrity projects across Europe on Erasmus projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. And finally, last but not least, Laura.
Hi, Mary Claire. Yep, my name is Laura Costello. I'm an assistant professor in academic practice in Mary Immaculate College in Limerick. I work in LEAD, which is in learning enhancement and academic development, and my role is really to support the professional learning of academic staff.
Thanks so much, Laura. And finally, just to say, the student voice was really strongly represented in the development of this strategy through AMLE, and unfortunately they could not be here today to join us for our discussion, but Emma Muldoon Ryan has sent me through some comments that I might bring into the discussion as well as we work through our discussion in the next little while. So, you know, I suppose just to as you can see here from the group, we are a broad church. We have ETB representation. We have private colleges, higher education, etc. So we're, very grateful within NAIN that we have representation from a wide cross section, and we really feel that this is the strength of NAIN, that any guidance or documents or ambitions that we might have of a group are particularly relevant to quite a lot of that higher and further education and training sector, and so that is, I suppose, laid out or set out in our ambitions within the strategy. So without further ado then, I might start, I suppose, maybe Justin, if you don't mind, with maybe talking us through generally the strategy, how it's laid out, and our ambitions that are set out within it.
Certainly, thanks, Mary Claire. So, so this strategy runs from 2025 to 2028, and I think what's important to say first of all is that it really builds on previous successes of the National Academic Integrity Network, and its objectives are to set out plans for the years ahead and an ambitious roadmap that will help to embed academic integrity as an important cornerstone of educational excellence in our higher education and further education and training institutions in Ireland. So to start, the mission that is stated in the policy is really that NAIN is a peer collaborative network, and you can get that sense from the participation of the group today. And that its mission is to offer leadership, guidance and support to the various stakeholders across the country in further and higher education and training in Ireland. So another of NAIN's core, or another part of NAIN's core mission is to identify, promote and sustain best practices among learners, educators and our institutions in addressing a range of challenges to academic integrity. So that is really the mission in a nutshell, and it guides a lot of the content of this new strategy. Another thing that is key to the substance and content of the strategy is a set of core values underpinning NAIN and this strategy. The core value, it'll come as no surprise to hear, of NAIN is integrity. And that is underpinned by the 6 fundamental values that are outlined by the ICAI, the International Centre for Academic Integrity. Those of you who work in this area will be very familiar with these fundamental values. They're honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, and courage. So in thinking about how we might operationalize those values to guide NAIN's work, we have also identified a set of values for that purpose. So the first is ethical. We're committed to upholding the highest standards in academic integrity and across our institutions. It's also inclusive, right? So again, from a sense of the constitution of our group today and of the NAIN membership, it's very evident that we welcome diverse views from across the sector. We are committed to learners and educators and have a central focus on support. Again, we are collaborative. We work together as a collaborative group towards shared goals and shared interests. We are also informed. We're research-based and aware of best practices, both nationally and internationally. We aim to be open as well. That is transparent and receptive to innovations and new practices, but also responsive. So cognizant of the fact that academic integrity and misconduct is a dynamic and evolving field, we aim to address emerging challenges as and when we can. And we're focused on impactful activities. So we like to think of the group as effective. And so all of these values help to guide how we developed this strategy, and I think you can see how some of them are crystallized in the structure of the strategy, which is based around 4 strategic goals. And so I'll go through each one of these and say a little bit about them, but we will return to these in the discussion that follows. So the first goal is to, excuse me, empower NAIN members to foster a culture of academic integrity. So we want to support members with resources and guidance. We also want to promote learner engagement and representation, and to encourage participation in national and international events.
You're muted, Justin. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just
removing
okay. the frog from my throat.
Quite okay, thanks.
The second goal is to provide leadership and stewardship in academic integrity. So we want to raise public awareness as well as broad awareness within institutions. We also want to promote assessment practices that uphold integrity, and as I mentioned earlier, to monitor and scan the horizon and respond to emerging threats in this space. The third goal is to develop, collate and disseminate resources across the sector to support our membership and member institutions by providing practical supports and training. We've done that over the past few years with a range of publications and events that we've arranged, and aim to continue that. We want to facilitate the sharing of resources and experiential knowledge, and to host events and professional development opportunities. And the fourth goal is to enhance the network through collaboration. And this is where we look outwards and aim to foster partnerships with European and international partners and agencies. We also want to support collaborative research and innovation, and promote, where we can, access to grants, awards and bursaries. So those are the four key strategic goals as they appear in the strategy. And I think I'll hand you back to Mary Claire, and she will perhaps guide us through discussing some of those.
Great, thanks, Justin. So I suppose for those who are interested in how these came about, or how these goals emerged, we were building on a previous strategy that had been published by NAIN, and the fantastic work of NAIN up until the development of this strategy, chaired by Billy Kelly. And Billy very kindly sat on this working group in the development of the strategy with us. And I suppose a lot of the goals and objectives that we have set out are actually things that they're not a stretch. They're already happening and very much part and parcel of our practice as academics and the lived reality. But of course, it's always really helpful to frame things formally and actually to set out further ambitions, further, I suppose, desires in terms of, particularly I'm thinking about collaboration with European and international colleagues, and that we're such a coherent and solid group nationally who have achieved so much. How can we build on those successes further? And so it came about, I suppose, this document through a working group of 14 individuals, again from a cross section of members of NAIN, and we met on 4 occasions. It seems like a long time ago now, but on some very warm days in the summer months, and it was kind of an iterative process working with colleagues over time to develop this document, and then finally bringing it to the wider NAIN membership for comment and review. So rather than it being a document that's born in a room in kind of like an ivory tower, it's very much something that was beaten out over time, and is I suppose what people feel is a very achievable and practical strategy that will be of assistance to us in our various different roles. So I suppose if anyone's wondering about the process, it was at times, I suppose, felt like no progress was being made, and we were ruminating on very minor details, but then suddenly rapid progress being made when we, I suppose, found our rhythm a little bit with it. So just maybe then turning to the kind of strategy as Justin so expertly summarised there. Thinking about a question that I have here about what are the key aspects of the strategy that will drive forward NAIN's mission, and thinking about really what is going to make us as an entity go forward to uphold our values and to achieve where we feel we sit within the educational landscape in Ireland. I don't know who maybe wants to think about that to start with. Fiona, maybe that wasn't a hand.
It wasn't, but I'm happy to jump in.
Thank you, Fiona.
Just to reiterate what you were saying about the process of developing the strategy. Way back, and Laura, you might remember, and others here, were at a workshop in DCU that Billy facilitated, where we brainstormed the beginnings of a new strategy. And I think that we brought that to the first meeting, if my memory serves me. So it's going on a long time. It's been extremely collaborative. In terms of upholding, I suppose, our mission and our identity, we're very well respected in the international space with academic integrity. And it's very exciting to be leading edge in that space, but it does put a lot of pressure on us to keep up that good work and to continue to showcase good practice. But I do think we have a very strong advantage in that we are, as a network, so inclusive, collaborative and collegial. And I think the fact that we are really open to bringing our challenges around academic integrity to this group of experts, I think we are naturally, I suppose, developing those goals all the time. I mean, we're always about fostering this culture of promoting academic integrity. We're always about leadership, stewardship, sharing what we're doing in our own institutions, and really about showcasing and disseminating our good practice and enhancing collaboration. So I think we are living it naturally. So that's what's really exciting. It feels like a real strategy.
Thanks, Fiona. And for me, I think it was brilliant to have a strategy that we were building on, which was very much focused on developing outputs and guidelines. And NAIN has 4 guidelines that are widely used and integrated across organisations in the country. What I really wanted to develop on or build on was, I suppose, an outward looking, how we can seek to kind of integrate our influence into, and as you say, we're so widely respected, and how we can bring that to bear or have conversations with our counterparts in other countries. And it's maybe something that's less comfortable sometimes for Irish people, saying, no, we are experts in this space. We have plenty of lived experience, and how can we build and collaborate with other individuals? And for me, that's a particularly exciting piece that I'm interested to see how that will develop. That maybe we have been inward looking, and rightly so, and we will continue to be so in terms of the resources we produce, but how can we work externally as well? Laura, yes.
Thanks, Mary Claire. I was just to agree with you. I was reading through the strategy earlier on, and that was one of the things that jumped out at me really, was how strongly it calls for cross-institutional, inter-institutional, national, European and international collaboration. And I think that's a really strong benchmark and target to set for ourselves. I mean, we've got a huge amount to learn both with and from each other. And I think really explicitly articulating that as a goal and ambition for ourselves is something that we should really welcome. And I think as well, it's really going to, I suppose, cement how we perceive ourselves to be one of the global leaders in this area, and we need to really strive for that, and to continue to work on that. So I think we'll see a lot of benefits to practice and scholarship will come from this very outward looking, both as say European and internationally, but also I think there's quite strong calls for more interinstitutional collaboration, which is, as we said, is happening already, but it calls for more of that and continued good practices.
Thanks, Laura. And I think, it's a slow realization that many of us have come to, that maybe until this point, or up to this point, working in kind of with our universities or in our own organization, and having quite a siloed or focused institutional approach has worked in the past because we were responsive to the culture, etc., within our own institutions. But I suppose faced with the elephant in the room of the Gen AI challenge, that is no longer serving us well, and kind of helping with the burden of sharing practice, sharing experiences, and seeing how we can incorporate that into guidance is the way forward now, and faced with this kind of battle, I suppose, as it were, or maybe just a reinvention of education assessments that have to go on now with Gen AI, and there's no point in doing that singularly. Catherine, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, and I agree very much with everyone. The collaboration, the looking outward, etc., and also looking inward between ourselves. And I think one of the key strengths of this strategy is that diverse experience that we have in NAIN, from higher education institutions, the private colleges, ourselves and the ETB and the Education and Training Board network, because we're bringing the training aspect into the NAIN strategy, I think really very much for the first time. And the ETBs and the training, the FET sector, further education and training, is such a diverse area that it can only benefit from the experience that has been there before NAIN has incorporated us. But I think it has also brought into the knowledge for the higher education institutions of the diverse nature of the further education and the challenges we face. Collectively, they're very similar, but yet they have a lot of diversity. And I think that's something that will benefit the strategy, and also we will learn from the implementation of the NAIN strategy and the benefit of our experiences in sharing best practice across that diverse range. We're representing from levels 1 to 10 on the national framework, which is, I don't think that is happening anywhere else in the world.
Yes, the heterogeneity of, I suppose, the organizations which we come from and which are kind of held under the umbrella of NAIN is a challenge, I suppose, that I kind of alluded to in developing the strategy, to make sure we had the ambitions and objectives that were realistic and relevant to the organization, but it is really the strength, and there's so much to be learned across between organizations that maybe hadn't been realized formally up until this point, perhaps, or hadn't been kind of given an avenue to do that before. Justin.
So yeah, I just want to echo what everyone has said so far. In particular, Fiona's point about the fact that we are currently living and actively, engaging in several of these strategic goals already, and that has been core to how NAIN has operated. If I could just focus on one part that I think might help in driving the strategy forward in one particular way, it would be on the development and dissemination of resources, because as Fiona says, we are rightly very, very well respected internationally for how we have organized and conducted our business. I still think that we could do a little bit better in terms of creating awareness of our work among colleagues in our institutions. Now, the resources that we have developed to date, like the framework and the lexicon and others, are really key to much of my day-to-day work. But I still feel that there is something of a gap in general knowledge of NAIN and its activities among academics in my institution, and certainly in other institutions as well. So I think we've proven that we can develop really valuable resources. I think maybe as part of this strategy, if we could perhaps put more of our energies into trying to disseminate this more widely and to articulate the excellence of these resources and the value of them to colleagues, because we know that these are really valuable and really helpful. We've all had that experience of using these resources. If we can spread the word a bit better, I think that will help to drive the strategy on further.
Thanks, Justin. Loretta, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, so I also echo what everyone else has said about kind of the inclusive nature and collaborative nature of the network, and the design of the strategy kind of following on from that, both internally and then also to looking out to how we're engaging with others and making sure that we are engaging with the whole community that academic integrity relates to. And then I guess building a little bit on what Justin was saying, I think the fact that the strategy covers so many different dimensions of academic integrity now, and the work that we're doing in a more formalized way will be a key aspect for driving it forward. So it's inclusive of different areas like research, developing the resources, engaging with learners, the leadership, and then disseminating all of these materials, and kind of having that very formalized in that approach where we can kind of pull that together with then other pieces of what we're doing within the network with working groups and so forth. And like you say, covering a lot of the work that is already happening, but kind of formalizing that and having it there on paper in the strategy across all of those different dimensions, I think is a key thing that's important as well. And that has been done because all of those aspects are needed. And a lot of the time they can tie together as well and feed into each other. And I think that the way it's been laid out in the strategy kind of reflects that and does pull all of those important pieces together.
Yeah, thanks, Loretta. And as you say, a lot of this stuff, it gave us a good time to pause and think about, so what have we done? And let's write that down because we're doing really well, and let's capture that and build on that. And I think to kind of formally map that out was a really invaluable activity to do, I think. Fiona, I might bring you in there.
Thank you. And just to follow on, I guess, from what others have said, and particularly, I guess, what Justin was saying about dissemination and maybe having a bit of work to do to sort of bring the disengaged in our institutions. I think key to that will be senior leadership. And that's called out quite a lot in our strategy. And that really excites me, because if we don't have the commitment of our senior leaders, it's going to be difficult to get commitment of from our colleagues. But the other opportunity that really excites me in this strategy is the opportunity to work with colleagues, both in our own institutions, but across the network and indeed internationally, on assessment design. Gen AI has given us the opportunity to really look at assessment design and get excited about it, and look at it from both module, stage and program level, and get back this real sense of authentic assessment design, not just because it's a lovely word and everyone uses it so beautifully, but because it's so important. And take back assessment, take it back into our hands, hold it carefully, look at it, stop panicking about Gen AI, and look at the value that assessment can bring to learning and to us as educators. So I would really like to develop sort of work with a working group on that. And I think that's one of the plans to emanate from this strategy, is to develop some working groups, and one of them is around assessment design.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, that's very much lived reality in my role in UL. If I had €1 for every time I was asked about, so tell me how to redesign my assessment now with AI, I'd be a very wealthy woman. And I think it's an experience we all have. This is there is a clear and urgent need. There's always been a need for reviewing assessment, I would argue, out of good practice, but maybe it wasn't as urgent unfortunately across some programs or modules. And so this is, you know, a really good opportunity now to take stock and think about the new world as well, about what's changing in professional life and in whatever academic discipline now that AI is here, and then trying to map that backwards into terms of how we integrating into assessment. Catherine, I might bring you in there. Oh, you're muted, Catherine.
I think moving the discussion on, I think the particularly in goal number 1, where we talk about optimizing and empowering learner engagement, is actually one of the key strengths of the strategy, in that this is not something that we're looking at developing in isolation as educators, trainers, academics. We're looking at engaging with the learners and ensuring they're represented in everything we do with NAIN. And I think that has to be one of the key strengths of this. It's the consultation with the learner, it's the learner voice, it's the learner feedback. And I mean, we do have representatives from different learning groups contributing to what we work at in NAIN.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and certainly the kind of absolutely implicitness of the student in anything we do or say. I'm minded of that phrase, no decision about me without me. It kind of always stays forefront in my head when I'm trying to make a decision about policy or how this is going to happen in practice. And so we really strive to kind of ensure that students are well represented in our conversations. If they're not within our conversations, we will consult to ensure that we're being quite responsive to their needs and their views as well. Laura, I might bring you in there.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary Claire. I think I'm going to echo what some have said, but one of the strengths I think for this strategy is that it really calls out and represents this notion that academic integrity is everybody's responsibility. So there's a very, very clear, I suppose, tasks and challenges for all stakeholders across the further and higher education sector. So students, as Catherine has pointed out, and as Fiona has mentioned, senior managers, academic teaching staff, professional services staff, and so on, we all have a role to play. And I think the strategy really articulates that, and really, I suppose, pushes us within all of our roles to try and see how can we work collectively to create that sort of whole of institution culture and move away from perhaps somewhat siloed approaches to academic integrity, where little pieces of work were being done in different places. And I think the appointment of roles such as academic integrity officers and similar, along with the strategy, is really going to push the agenda forward, and it's really to be welcomed.
Laura, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm just kind of picking up a little bit on what Catherine and Laura have both said, in terms of one of the things I was most excited about in the strategy as well is that piece around learner engagement and formalizing that a bit more, particularly through a working group focused around that. And also one of the kind of performance indicators for that that outcome of this, or under the goal, the objective is around kind of putting together case studies of what are effective learner engagement strategies across our different institutions. And I think that reiterates again that collaborative nature and pulling together the work that people are already doing in these areas. People are engaging in lots of different ways, and how can we bring that together and then maybe share and replicate that across our different organizations. to really make sure, because the learner is often really at the center of academic integrity. Well, we're all a part of it, and making sure that they are engaged in ways that make sense for them. So consulting with them, and then also seeing what works at different places and bringing that together in a more formalized way to have more guidance around that aspect of engaging with students. Because I think that's one thing that maybe has been a little bit missing in the past, is a lot of the guidance documents that are out there are aimed at staff in some way.
Yeah, and I suppose sometimes when faced with a crisis, you act and you do what is best and to produce something, and then maybe when you take a step back, you go, oh gosh, didn't do that so well. And we even had that experience within my own institution, where we developed loads of beautiful resources for our website, and then it was a kind of urgent, and we were being asked to do it, but we didn't have time really to meaningfully engage with students. It just was the time pressure in it. We did it last summer, and I have to say it was I was skeptical to start with about how it would go. But honestly, it was such a refreshing experience, and really has completely altered my way of thinking about how we pitch things and how we frame things, and also how clued in our student population are about assessment, about what is good assessment, what feels good. And you nearly feel like saying, oh, it's kind of like turkeys voting for Christmas. Why would anyone be in favor of assessment? But students also really recognize that this is preparing them for future careers, building skill sets. They're responsible adults. They want to learn. They've come to an organization to gain education and gain experience, and so they want the standards to be high. And I think really, again, kind of thinking about how central they are to those conversations is really important. Fiona.
It's lovely to hear both Loretta and yourself talking so enthusiastically about student engagement, and you're so right. It's key. It always surprises me, and I don't know why it continues to surprise me, how knowledgeable they are and how much value they can add to our work. And just in terms of my passion in assessment to promote academic integrity, and I know Laura and I did some work on this before in DCU, but involving students in assessment design, it's just such an easy thing to do. And they're already then buying into the assessment, and they're giving you really valuable advice and guidance on what's going to engage them, what's going to work for them, so we've a lot of work and opportunities there. There are some examples of policies that sometimes restrict that, where external examiners have to have the assessment to review beforehand. So I think that's a body work we can do in the working group around that, to try and make it easier to get student buy-in, that the policy support us to do that rather than prohibit us from doing it. But it's really exciting. And the other quick thing I'll say, and then I'll stop, is it's lovely to see all the 4 goals literally woven together. It's the senior management, it's the collaboration, it's the student partnership, it's assessment to promote academic integrity. They're all like, you cannot separate one out. We had difficulty designing the goals. We were trying to decide where the objectives sat, because they sat across so many different goals. And you did great work on that, Mary Claire, trying to find them all a good home, because we did think they overlapped a lot, which is good. That's really important. They shouldn't be standalone. Thank you.
Absolutely. There was so much kind of speaking across or within the document that trying to understand where the home was, and maybe kind of recognize that sometimes there was a bit of kind of interconnectedness between everything. Just to come in there, I suppose, in terms of, I received some comments from AMLE, as I mentioned at the start, around the strategy, and they particularly honed in on this aspect of assessment design or assessment redesign, and saying how important and of value this was to students more widely. And they really wanted to highlight that as an important part of the strategy, and that they, as the group in AMLE, have a particular interest in, good quality assessment, authentic assessment, and are very much supportive of that aspect of the document. So that's wonderful to hear that affirmed as well in their comments. I'm kind of conscious of time. So really what I would like maybe is to go around everyone and thinking about the question about how the strategy will come to life for us. What do we think are the things that we need to do as NAIN as a group, but also perhaps as individuals, to really commit to bringing our goals to fruition, and that at the conclusion of the strategy we can look and say, that was really good. It brought us on within our institutions. It brought us on maybe nationally and internationally as well. And so what are the key things we can call out there? I might go first to give people thinking time, but also maybe to set out my own kind of ambitions on it. We've set up, I suppose, a working group structure to live out this strategy. And so we've 5 working groups. And I suppose at the time we're recording, we're currently closing off our expressions of interest for that. And that will have a structure of a chair, most probably a co-chair, and then also members from across NAIN. And I suppose, we're always very welcoming of new members to join working groups and to bring fresh views and fresh ideas. So if you're listening to this and, your organisation is perhaps not part of NAIN, please do reach out and we'd be more than happy to welcome you into the fold. I suppose then, just in terms of from my own perspective about the strategy coming to light, I work within a higher education institution, and I'm faced with the task of policy development, policy implementation, and that sometimes can feel like a lonely job. I'm the only one of me here, and I have no, I suppose, community necessarily to turn to for guidance or advice. And I've really found a home for that within NAIN and within colleagues within NAIN. So I think what speaks to me most within the document is this opportunity to work with others within institutions in Ireland, and then reach out as well through connections that we might have with the ENAI and the ICAI to work on our ambitions. I've long been an advocate for academic integrity being an academic discipline of itself. It has its own language, it has its own theory and practice. Of course, it pulls on wider educational practice, but I think owning our space, negotiating our space, and kind of gaining that view, I suppose, from across the sector that we are specialists in this area, and we are competent and able of speaking quite well in this area. And I suppose trying to monopolize on the really strong connections we already have, to have that lived out further and to produce outputs, research outputs, guidance, whatever it is, through those networks that we've established. So I'll stop talking now. Who wants to come in next about what they think they feel like would be needed, or how the strategy is going to come to life for them? I'll call on somebody now. Catherine.
Yeah, and I really resonate. What you've said resonates very much with me, Mary Claire. And I think the key part is disseminating the what we do in NAIN, what we're about, how we can work and support and collaborate with each other, whether it's within Ireland or abroad. So I think for me that one of the key objectives highlighted within the strategy is that dissemination role about what we're doing very well, and how we can learn from each other. And I think it was, as Laura said, academic integrity is a responsibility of all of us. So it's encouraging that ownership, encouraging taking responsibility for what we're doing very well and for sharing it, capturing that best practice across all sectors, but culminating in that collaboration, whether it's within the FET or the higher education, across sectors, with learners internationally, etc. So I think that united spirit together, we can achieve a lot. But I think we need to get the message out as to this is what we're about, and this is how we can work with our colleagues within the sector, whether it's institution level, whether it's at strategy level, whether it's at Irish or European level.
Thank you, Catherine. Justin.
So this is very similar to what excites both you and Catherine, but returns to my earlier point as well. I think what will bring it to life for me is getting involved in those working groups and collaborating with colleagues with that shared sense of purpose to produce valuable outputs as well, which then, as Catherine says, we can disseminate far and wide. I suppose the additional thing that would excite me even further, if such a thing were possible, would be the prospect of that kind of work then merging into the possibility of creating research. So we've already seen this in an embryonic way in some of the working groups who are considering developing academic publications out of the work that they've done. So I think participation in the working groups on its own is a very important thing, but it can be a really valuable springboard for further research and publication, which will then, hit another of our goals, which is to enhance the network through collaboration and speak to international partners as well.
Thanks, Justin. Loretta.
Yeah, I agree very much with what everyone has said so far. And I think all of the taking part in the working group to create the strategy and being on the steering committee and seeing all the phases of that, I think all of the work that has gone into that and the planning and kind of detail and deliberating over what was realistic and what wording made sense sets us up really well to be able to bring it to life, because as others have mentioned, it is very joined up across these areas, and it does have very specific targets as well, which I think are useful for us even to then individually and collectively reflect back on work that has been done and look at how we can bring that together in meeting some of those goals, whether it's pulling things together into resources or doing showcase events or case studies or showcases of what's happening at different places and bringing those together, which then touches upon all of those areas of collaboration and dissemination and visibility. And I suppose it is really that value of having the working groups formalizing some of that, but also just the connections that we can make across the network. I think there's a lot of appetite and excitement in doing these things together. And I think that this is really nicely kind of bringing all of that together so that we can kind of, like as Justin said, launch off into other areas and also formalize a lot of what has been done and showcase that a bit more.
Yep. Thank you, Loretta. Fiona, would you like to come in?
Yeah, this is all really exciting. It really is. And I guess to continue to keep it alive, I'd love us to remain as passionate as we are about academic integrity, not to be afraid of it, not to be hiding it, not to be seeing it as something that that we're trying to detect when people aren't behaving with integrity, but to say, as a country, as providers of education, we really want us and our learners to be very proud of their integrity, to be very proud of the course they're doing and the integrity of that course and their integrity, so that integrity is a value, like a really strong value, both with the students and with the educators. And we're recognised as that, not recognised as being institutions that are good at detecting or even promoting academic integrity, but that we live and breathe it. We see it as something really, really valuable, and we want to share that passion with as many people will come along with us on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of building to, rather than framing everything as misconduct and policing and punishment and those kinds of things, that it's part of our value set that is kind of natural and implicit in everything we do, both as educators and as learners. Laura.
Thanks, Mary Claire. I'm really excited to see the establishment of Working Group 1, so assessment, integrity and innovation. So it's in my role as an academic developer, I have so many conversations about assessment, and it's something that interests staff, that concerns staff, and really it gives us an in to have conversations with them about assessment design, looking at constructive alignment, learning outcomes, really kind of best practice when it comes to assessment. And I think the work that's Fiona and I worked in a project in 2017, I think it was, Fiona, around assessment design and academic integrity. And it's still, those principles are still really relevant nearly, 8 years later. And so I'm very excited to see the outcome of that working group in terms of resources and so on. And maybe to build on Justin's point where you talked about kind of dissemination into research, I'm really interested to see the work of NAIN filtering more into the practice, into people's classrooms in further and higher education, because I think there's a lot of opportunities for the work of NAIN to reach more of the teaching population. I think for me anyway, Working Group 1 is going to be a really, really great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, and that definitely is an ambition. We've kind of, I suppose, in the establishment of any network or team or organization, you're thinking about the top line. Let's get some outputs and deliverables, and that was the big substantive work of NAIN in the past. And now it's about infiltration and influencing practice and doing that in soft ways, but in obvious ways as well. And I suppose and seeing how that will work for each of us within our organizations. Thank you everyone for your contributions today. I'm going to draw the conversation to a close here, but in the first place, like to thank a few different people, if possible, all the members of the working group who built this strategy so patiently and so helpfully with me from over the summer period, and they are named in the strategy if you wish to review that. Particularly to Billy Kelly, who stepped down as chair of NAIN in June 2025, but has been so influential for me, both when I initially joined NAIN, but now as a mentor and in helping me to think things through because of his vast experience that he has within the higher education sector in particular. So Billy has been, such a kind of a shining light in terms of academic integrity in Ireland, and so visionary. And I think his footprint is all over this, even though he's not joining us in the phone call today. And then also for the support of QQI, Kiva, Marshall, and Laura, Flynn as well, who's very patiently give us advice about, I suppose, their experiences of developing these types of documents, and are always there with very sage advice in the background. And of course, QQI established NAIN in 2019 and are give us a good steer in kind of thinking about how we might navigate our space. And then finally, to all of you for joining me here today. I think this has been a really wide-ranging discussion, and we focused on the strategy, but we focused on things that are pertinent and are relevant to us within our space as well. And I think it's always great to have an opportunity to kind of call those out and to explore them and turn them over as well. And the more we talk about them, things like assessment design, what good assessment looks like, the easier those conversations are to have with colleagues as well. So thank you everyone. Thank you Catherine, Justin, Laura, Fiona, Loretta for joining me here. And I'm looking forward to working with you over the next few years on bringing the strategy to life. Thanks very much everyone.